Take two because we were interrupted by the phone. Hello and welcome to another OGGM adventure on another foggy, frickin' cold day in the beach community of Ventura, California. And today we're doing another one of those GM tips adventure building. Here's some ideas, use them or don't. I don't really care because I'm not getting paid for this thingy. And today we're going to talk about mobs and how to use mobs. Now, when we refer to mobs, it's just an amorphous mass of combat. It could be bees, it could be bats, it could be bandits, it could be burglars. Wow, I mean, everything I'm using is, it could be raptors, it could be sharks. Sharks is always fun. It could be two-headed raptor sharks. I don't know. It's just a mass of things that are going to do damage to the party. Now, when dealing with a mob, you don't want to give each thing in the mob individual hit points, and you don't want to give each thing in the mob individual armor class, and you don't want to give each thing in the mob an individual attack. That would just take too much time. And that's what they did in the old days. You'd have to roll the hit for all the fucking 15 goblins, and then the 15 goblins would have to roll the hit for each member in the party, and that would take 7 hours to resolve one round of combat. That's just stupid. Rather, the mob is just a mass of hit points represented by a bunch of individual targets. It does a massive damage every round, no matter what. The party has three options basically in how to deal with the mob, depending upon how you want to write it. But the mob doesn't have an armor class. The mob doesn't have a roll to hit. The mob always hits. And if the party does damage to the mob, then it's just always going to be successful. You have a set, you could just say every round, no matter what the party hits, you don't even have to roll. There's just so many of them. I'm going to assume you hit or whatever. There's a couple ways to do it, and we're going to discuss those one by one. So first, two types of mobs. Type 1 of mob is massive hit points. Let's say for a low level encounter, 20, 50, depending upon how many characters you have. Doesn't matter how many are in the mob. For the sake, the mob is endless. It's amorphous. Once the party does 50 points of damage to the mob is dispersed or killed, and they can search it for treasure. Then you can decide, oh, there was 20 of them or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're not going to have the party rolling every round for every individual member of the goons. No, just 50 points. However the party manages to do 50 points of damage to the mob, 20 points of damage to the mob, 100 points of damage to the mob. That's it. Once that threshold is hit, mob's gone. Now, you could say, all right, if you roll an 8 or higher, you just instantly kill a member of the mob. If you're doing area attacks like Fireball, then that's how many hit points you've killed. You've done 16 points of damage, you've done 22 points of damage to the mob, whatever. Fireball is the best way to get rid of mobs, area effect type thing. But if you don't have an area effect, if you're just a bunch of people doing individual damage with their arrows and their swords, and I get 2 attacks a round, but if I spend a key, I get another attack. Sponsor me, Venom. Then you can just say, okay, roll 8 or higher, you hit, you kill one. Bam, that's it, doesn't matter. That's one way. The other way, especially if you're dealing with higher level characters who want to feel epic, is you say, roll 8 or higher, do your damage. And he says, oh, I did 13 points of damage. So like, you kill 13 of them, just whack, 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 boom. You're swinging and just heads are rolling and you stand there on a body of 13 giant bees. You are fucking awesome. And that makes them feel like, yeah, I killed 13 guys. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter because each member of the mob has 1 hit point. So, and you could just say, roll an 8 or higher, 6 or higher, whatever, or just, you hit. No matter what. You don't have to roll. There's just so many of them. Chances are you're going to hit. So you kill one. How many attacks around do you get this round? 1. Right, you've killed 1. How many attacks around do you get? 2. Okay, you killed 2. Or, if you want to be more generous, especially with dealing with higher level parties, how much damage did you do? Just roll your damage. There's no criticals, no fumbles. You hit. Just, all right, I did 36 points of damage. 36 of them are dead. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because we're dealing with a massive hit points. We're not dealing with individual hit points. We're dealing with a massive hit points. And what that mass is reached a limit, they're gone. However you decide that limit is reached, that's up to the individual. For low levels, I would say, just 1 point. Or if they hit, they're dead. For higher levels, then let them feel heroic and say, roll your damage, and you kill 13 of them. Yes, I know it's ridiculous, but you're 12th level, so you should be able to do ridiculous shit by now. Okay, mob number 1, hit point map. Mob number 2, trigger. Means the mob does not go away until the party performs a trigger. This is a much harder one because the party has to figure out what the trigger is. Now, the trigger could be something simply as leaving, which is option number 3. We could always just leave. And once they leave, the mob, for whatever, is like, yeah, we won. The trigger could be, we're in the dark, we're being attacked by bats, a really bright light. And once you set up the really bright light, the mob goes away. The trigger could be a fireball. The trigger could be burning down the forest. The trigger could be summoning of storms, setting up walls. The trigger could be a password, like, oh, weren't we given that clue 3 rooms ago that if we say the word peanut butter jelly sandwich, the mob of skeletons instantly stops because that's the command word of the Dark Prince of Sandwiches. It doesn't matter. There's a trigger. And once that trigger is activated by the party, the mob is dispersed. They just go away or they're defeated, whatever. They can search for treasure or whatever reward, if any you want to give them, has been achieved because they figured out the trigger. Again, this is the harder of the two because the party has to figure out what the trigger is. And in the mass of taking damage every round, they might not be thinking straight, and you could have a TPK before you know it. But that's okay, because you probably don't want your mob to kill the party unless you're an asshole GM, so you could just say they're captured. And then that opens up a whole new adventure of trying to escape from wherever they're captured, whatever. How much damage does the mob do? Okay, so here's where we get to the mean part. Here's where we get to the how a mob is I feel like I'm just gonna, The mob always hits. Doesn't matter what your armor class is, doesn't matter how many magical defenses you are, doesn't matter if you've got evasion or superpowers or you're invisible or whatever. There are so many attacks filling the area that math says one of those is going to hit. So if 100 guys are shooting 100 arrows every round into the mass of our 4 characters, just probability says at least one of those arrows is going to hit every guy. So every round, you have an amount of damage that you're going to do to every member of the party, no matter what, unless they come up with something unbelievably clever, like, I cast Wall of Force. Or a huge gust of wind. Doesn't matter. And even then, the chances are one of the bad guys could have rolled a natural 20. So, natural 20, whatever. Doesn't matter. You're just going to say, every round, 1 point of damage to everybody in the party. Every round, a D4 point of damage to everybody in the party. Every round, a D8 point of damage to the party. Every round, a D8 times 3 points of damage to the party. Every round, a D12 to everybody in the party. Until they end. And that, after a while, can start just like, oh my God, we're just getting our asses handed to us by these guys in the dark and the guys in the bushes. How do we stop this? A, you do X amount of damage to them. Or B, you activate the trigger. Or C, you go away. And that's why mobs are such a great tool, because you could spring them on the party anywhere, and they can do as much evil crap to the party as you want, depending upon how devastating you what this map could be. It could be a D4 every round, and every 3 rounds a pyromaniac mob throws in a thunder egg or whatever, or a Molotov cocktail, or my favorite is a beehive. You haven't seen people at a party of adventurers freak out until a crazy goblin has a beehive in his and he throws it into the center of the party, and suddenly the party has to deal with a bunch of bees around them as in addition to the goblins. Oh my God! The first time I did that, the people were like, "Oh, bees! That's not fair." So, anyways, there we go. Mobs. That is the mob mechanic, and mobs work great for ambushes because they can just jump out of nowhere, pin the party down with attacks every round until the party figures out how to end the mob. So there you go. There's the mob mechanic briefly explained. Again, a mob can be a massive hit points or a mob can be a trigger. Party has to do X amount of hit points, 20, 50, 100, before the mob is dispersed. And then they can search for treasure. Or the party has to do a trigger, like hold up the glowing staff and say Belloc, and then the undead swarm is dispersed, whatever. I don't know. Obviously, the party is going to be very clever, and they're going to come up with new and interesting and unusual ways to circumvent the mob. And that's okay, because the mob's not supposed to be the end-all, be-all. It's just supposed to be something you can throw at them to slow them down or to keep pace of things. If you're in a, if it looks like everybody's grinding down and starting to argue amongst each other and there's no action going on and you're just sitting there for like 5 minutes listening to them argue over who gets the magic sword, throw a mob at them. Get them back moving, get them back functioning, get them back involved in the game. Keep that action going. You could always throw more orcs at them. You could always throw, well, I can't say orc, can I? Sorry. You could always throw more arrows at them. It doesn't matter. It's just a way to move things on. And then maybe you could have them drop a clue as to what's going on at the adventure at the end of the encounter with the mob. Now, worst comes to worst, the mob succeeds and kills the party. Well, that would suck. You don't want the party to die to a bunch of 0-level goons. You want the party to die to the big bad guy at the end who's in charge of the 0-level goons. So have the party get captured, because that's a great way to take their stuff away and place them in a situation where they have to outthink a capture scenario. Jailbreak scenarios are always fun. Well, how are bees going to capture a bunch of player characters, OGGM? Well, maybe the bees decide to, cocoon them in honey to use them for food for their babies later on. Or maybe after the swarm of giant, the undead win, they drag them back to their master. The bees are then, you find out the bees are actually under the control of an evil druid. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You don't have to explain how they got captured. It's just you don't want them to get killed by the mob unless you're in a really bad mood and just want to TPK them because they're being stupid fucks. Then fine, go ahead. They get captured. And then that opens up to another scenario, which we'll just talk about another time. So that's mobs. I hope you enjoyed the words coming out of my mouth. If you do, please consider supporting me because I don't have a job. And I'll talk to you losers later.